and you can look at stuff and I can sell merchandise outside of the brick and mortar that I'm used to.
Pawn shops were always about trust, negotiation, and grit, but few understood the high stakes like Les Gold. The man who became a legend in Detroit's toughest neighborhoods had built an empire from nothing. His store, American Jewelry and Loan, wasn't just a business. It was a cultural phenomenon. Customers didn't just come for loans. They came for the drama, the confrontations, and the rare glimpse of raw human emotion played out in front of the cameras. Les had a talent few could match, turning everyday transactions into television gold, capturing the attention of millions. From an early age, Les was immersed in the pawn world. At just 7, he walked into his father Sam Gold's shop and immediately absorbed the art of the deal. He learned the psychology of desperation, the value of patience, and the unrelenting importance of numbers. By the time he took over, Les had a vision far bigger than the cramped shops of Detroit's past. He wanted to create a pawn business that wasn't just functional, it was iconic. In 1993, Les made a bold decision that would change the course of his life. He moved to 2450 Greenfield Road, transforming a simple pawn shop into a 50,000 square foot retail powerhouse. Hundreds of thousands of items flowed through the doors, from gold chains and vintage watches to rare collectibles and family heirlooms. Every minute brought chaos, but Les thrived in it. Where others saw disorder, he saw profit. Where others hesitated, he moved decisively. And he understood something crucial: controversy sells. Detroit's 8M neighborhood was far from polished. It was gritty, raw, and real. A perfect stage for the drama Les knew would captivate audiences. When reality television began exploding, shows like Pawn Stars proved that pawn shops could entertain. But Les offered something different. Hardcore pawn was raw, visceral, and unapologetic. Arguments erupted, stolen items created tension, and family drama was front and center. Viewers couldn't look away. At its peak, over 2 million people tuned in every week to watch Les negotiate, confront, and dominate. Success brought more than fame. Merchandise sales skyrocketed, appearances became lucrative, and Les's net worth soared. He was living the American dream, a self-made millionaire whose life story seemed untouchable. Yet, with each success came temptation, and Les's ambitions began to stretch far beyond the shop. Real estate became a tantalizing opportunity. Detroit was slowly recovering from decades of decline, and Les, with his intimate knowledge of the city, believed he could profit while revitalizing neighborhoods. He invested heavily, buying multiple properties with dreams of mixed-use developments, retail below, affordable housing above. On paper, it was brilliant, but the reality was far harsher. These buildings weren't just old, they were disasters. Roofs collapsed, water damage consumed walls, and asbestos lurked everywhere. Les's initial $5 million renovation budget quickly spiraled into $15 million. Contractors demanded upfront payments, work stalled, and vandalism ran rampant. The properties deteriorated faster than they could be fixed, and Detroit's promise of a revival vanished. Undeterred, Les looked to Las Vegas for his next venture. Observing the success of Pawn Stars, he believed he could replicate and surpass it. He invested over $4 million into a 15,000 square foot luxury pawn shop. Everything was designed to dazzle: professional lighting, high-end merchandise, photo opportunities. But the location was just far enough from the Strip to fail. Tourists weren't there to pawn jewelry. They were there to gamble, drink, and see shows. Revenue fell short while expenses soared. Les burned $150,000 to $200,000 a month. After 18 months, the Las Vegas gamble ended in catastrophic failure. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, his family and business tensions grew. Seth Gold, Les's son, had been integral to operations for years, but he clashed with his father over modernizing and expanding the business. Seth wanted innovation, digital marketing, and a share in decision-making. Le résisted. His experience and instincts told him to stick with the traditional model. The arguments, once on-screen entertainment, were symptoms of deeper rifts. By late 2018, Seth had enough. He left to open Gold's pawn exchange just miles away. The move siphoned employees, customers, and revenue. Ashley Gold, Les's daughter, soon followed, creating her own jewelry business. Family fractures became public. Customers felt caught in the middle, unsure where loyalties lay. Les faced legal battles over contracts and equity claims. Attorney fees piled up to over $100,000 a month, accelerating the erosion of both wealth and legacy. Even if he won, the relationships he had spent a lifetime building were fractured beyond repair. Settlements totaling over $2 million were made, but the damage was done. As if these challenges weren't enough, a global catastrophe struck. COVID-19 arrived in early 2020, shutting down non-essential businesses. American Jewelry and Loan went dark. For a pawn shop, which thrives on face-to-face transactions, the closure was catastrophic. Attempted online systems failed as customers demanded the human touch. For 3 months, zero revenue flowed in, yet expenses continued. Mortgages, taxes, insurance, and a skeleton security staff. When the stores reopened, foot traffic had diminished. Many previous customers adapted their financial habits or chose other shops. Rising gold prices forced Les to pay out more in redemptions, straining cash flow further. New safety protocols added tens of thousands in expenses. By late 2020, the empire he had built was a shadow of itself. 2 of the 3 locations closed permanently, and over 40 employees were let go. On top of the financial strain, Les faced a personal crisis. In December 2020, he suffered a severe heart attack, requiring quadruple bypass surgery. Recovery took months, costing over $300,000 due to his high-deductible insurance plan. His absence caused further declines, as inexperienced staff mishandled transactions, alienating loyal customers. Even when he returned, his capacity for the intense work that had once defined him was diminished. The final blows came swiftly. In January 2022, a $3.2 million theft devastated the flagship store. Insurance only covered $1.3 million. Confidence in the business evaporated. By April 2022, after 44 years, Les filed for bankruptcy. The flagship store closed permanently, assets liquidated, and his life savings lost. Hardcore Pawn still aired in syndication, a haunting reminder of the empire he had built and lost. Les Gold's story is a stark lesson in the fragility of success. Fame offers no protection, fortune can vanish, and family conflicts can undermine even the strongest legacies. From Detroit's gritty streets to national television fame, Les reached unimaginable heights and fell just as dramatically. His journey is a reminder. Even the most calculated plans are vulnerable to risk, misfortune, and the unpredictable twists of life. Even after bankruptcy, Les Gold's life didn't immediately stabilize. The man who had once commanded the attention of millions now faced the daunting reality of rebuilding a life stripped of fortune, staff, and prestige. His reputation, carefully cultivated over decades, had been bruised not only by financial missteps, but by family strife and public failures. Each morning brought a new reminder of the empire that had crumbled. Empty stores, legal battles, and the stark truth that fame and fortune are fleeting. Yet, Les Gold had never been one to surrender easily. He adapted, doing part-time appraisal work at smaller pawn shops across Detroit. Every evaluation, every deal was a reminder of the skill and instinct that had made him legendary. Even in a diminished capacity, he remained respected. Customers recognized the sharp eye and negotiating process that had once defined American Jewelry and Loan. For Les, these small victories were bittersweet, a contrast to the grandeur he had lost, but proof that talent and experience cannot be entirely erased. The financial devastation, however, continued to weigh heavily. Years of mismanaged real estate investments, the failed Las Vegas expansion, legal settlements with his children, and mounting medical bills left him in a precarious position. Each decision that once seemed brilliant investing in revitalization projects, expanding into tourist destinations, or cutting costs on health insurance, now appeared as a painful miscalculation. In hindsight, the story of Les Gold is not just one of man losing wealth, but a cautionary tale about hubris, timing, and the limits of expertise. Family relationships, too, were permanently altered. Seth and Ashley Gold, once the core of his personal and professional world, had moved on. While no open animosity remained, the warmth and collaboration that had characterized earlier years were gone. The on-screen confrontations, once entertaining for millions, now mirrored the painful reality of fractured familial bonds. Les understood that money had driven a wedge deeper than television ever could. The dynamics he had nurtured, relying on loyalty and shared vision, had shifted under pressure. Control had always been paramount to him, but the lesson was clear. No empire, no matter how vast, is immune to the strains of ambition and personal conflict. Meanwhile, the Detroit landscape had shifted dramatically. Neighborhoods Les once knew intimately had evolved, and younger entrepreneurs had stepped in where he once ruled. Pawn shops that had weathered the pandemic with minimal disruption gained market share, while American Jewelry and Loan's reputation as a reliable face-to-face institution had been damaged beyond repair. What remained of his business struggled to maintain relevance, and the once vibrant 50,000-square-foot flagship store felt like a ghost of its former glory. Financial pressures were compounded by health concerns. The quadruple bypass surgery in late 2020 had left lasting effects. Les's stamina was diminished, and he had to navigate the delicate balance between protecting his health and sustaining his business. The hours he had once devoted to scrutinizing transactions, negotiating deals, and mentoring staff were now impossible. Every decision was now filtered through the lens of physical limitation, a cruel irony for a man whose life had been defined by relentless energy and personal oversight. Insurance missteps continued to haunt him. The reduction in coverage to save money earlier in his career now meant he faced massive out-of-pocket expenses at every turn. Each medical procedure, each hospital stay, and each rehabilitation session became a financial burden, compounding the losses from business failures. The hard lesson was that foresight in one area cannot always compensate for unforeseen events in another. The combination of health crises, financial overreach, and external circumstances created a perfect storm, leaving Les in a state few could have imagined. The psychological toll was equally severe. From the height of fame and wealth to the stark reality of near-complete loss, Les experienced what psychologists describe as the fall from grace effect. Confidence and identity, once intertwined with professional success, were shaken. Even with his remaining work in appraisal and consulting, the shadow of American Jewelry and Loan loomed large. Public perception mattered. Syndicated episodes of Hardcore Pawn continued to air, showing a wealthier, more dominant Les Gold. Audiences witnessed the contrast between the thriving, charismatic figure on screen and the man now struggling behind the scenes, a juxtaposition that underscored the fragility of public image versus private reality. The lessons of expansion and diversification had been brutally etched into his life story. Real estate, often lauded as a pathway to wealth, had proven perilous when paired with overconfidence and underestimation of structural risks. Las Vegas, meant to be a glamorous extension of his brand, had instead amplified losses and undermined reputation. The investments, though strategic in concept, failed in execution. Les's experiences illustrate a critical truth. Success in one domain does not guarantee success in another, and each venture carries unique risks that must be carefully assessed. Despite the losses, Les's instincts and expertise remain valuable. He continued mentoring smaller pawn shop owners, providing insights into negotiation, appraisal, and risk management. His legacy in the pawn community was enduring. New generations of brokers and entrepreneurs studied his methods, drawing lessons from both his triumphs and failures. Even in decline, his story served as a blueprint, demonstrating the power of innovation, the appeal of authentic human interaction, and the perils of overextension. By mid-2022, Les had adjusted to a life of careful financial management and simplified routines. The high-octane days of running multiple stores, negotiating on camera, and maintaining a celebrity persona were over. He had learned to appreciate the smaller victories, rebuilding trust with loyal customers, completing a successful appraisal, or offering guidance to others navigating the industry. While the empire he built was gone, the essence of his expertise endured. Hardcore Pawn, meanwhile, continued to attract viewers, albeit with a different narrative lens. Syndication episodes offered nostalgia, reminding audiences of the dramatic, confrontational, and compelling environment Les had created. To viewers, he remained the king of Detroit Pawn, but behind the scenes, the reality was far more complex. Fame could not shield him from economic downturns, family strife, or personal health crises. The juxtaposition of television glory and real-world hardship paints a stark picture. No matter how high one climbs, the margin for error narrows as stakes grow. Les's story also highlights the importance of adaptability. In Detroit, his instincts and deep community knowledge once provided a competitive advantage. Yet, the world changed, consumer behavior shifted, technological innovations transformed commerce, and external crises like the pandemic disrupted established models. Les's reluctance to embrace rapid change, though understandable given his extensive experience, ultimately contributed to vulnerabilities that could not be mitigated by skill alone. Beyond business and finance, the narrative underscores a deeply human element: the impact of ambition on family relationships. The very people Les had sought to mentor and empower, Seth and Ashley, became competitors, challenging the balance between loyalty, authority, and opportunity. Family enterprises, particularly those thrust into the spotlight of reality television, face unique pressures. Decisions must balance business acumen with emotional intelligence. In Les's case, even decades of experience could not fully prevent fractures from forming when personal ambitions collided with collective goals. In retrospect, each failure built upon the previous one, creating a cascade that ultimately led to the empire's collapse. Real estate losses, the Las Vegas venture, family departures, medical crises, and the pandemic were not isolated events. They were interwoven,